It's a pleasure and a privilege to be seated amongst such a diverse group of writers, and the discussion is translation, something that I'm very much interested in, and do sometimes endeavor to do. But as writers, I think one of those first curiosities of mine when you're a writer for me is to ask the kind of works that you have read in the past that sort of nudged you towards becoming writers yourselves. Can we start with that? Just curious to know. I think you have a mic here, I think.
Yes. Is it working?
I think...
Hello? Hello? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Oh my gosh. I think in a sense, everything that I read sort of influences my writing, because I feel like when you're reading a book, whether it be a good book or a bad book, I feel like you sort of absorb the things that work about the book, and well, I do anyway, and then I use those things to improve my own work. So say that there's a very good dialogue or a very good method of characterization, I'll then use that in my own work. And if, say, I'm reading a book and it's not gripping me, I don't want to carry on reading, I then try to figure out, okay, why don't I want to carry on reading? Why is this book not gripping me? And then I know to avoid that in my own writing. But of specific books, I think that there are some Welsh language books that have influenced my writing, certainly. A book called Ortyn y Gorchydd by an award-winning author called Angharad Price, and the way she discusses family as sort of, and she portrays landscape almost as a character, which is really beautiful.
Hello. Oh, yes, now it works. So, hello, everyone. Yes, obviously, reading books is something that you can't take away from a writer's work, I guess. It's something just we have to do, even if there are moments we feel like we don't really want to read anything else anew. But I think that the biggest impact was in my childhood when I read a lot of everything I had at home, like starting from Latvian fairy tales, which were quite scary, and continuing by Astrid Lindgren and everything she has written ever for kids, and Finnish mummy stories and a lot of those books. And I think that's the reason why I love and want to write something light and something with hope in it, and something for kids and young adults and teenagers. That's where I stuck. But in the same time, there are a lot of great literature which make me jealous, you know, when I read the book and then I'm like, oh, I want to do the same thing, it's so good. And these are the moments who have stayed with me, and I have my special shelf of the books I love the most. And they will be with me till the end of the time, you know. So yes, thank you everyone who does this wonderful work of writing. This is the food for our souls, I guess.
Hi. This is a good question. Oh, excuse me for my English is not good enough, but yeah, thank you. In Catalonia there are oral poetry tradition, and the people come, the festivals, the theaters, the bars all the time. And I was a child. My dad come these events, and for me in this time I think not difference with the music or the poetry, and it's my first shock. And when I to decide read the poetry, I think, well, it's the different at the performance, and in this moment, I understand that it's not the same write book of poems, and when you go these events, when the poets make a high performance, and all the time. My decision when I started to write poems is I want a performer or a poet. What's the difference? And the music, this is for one hand. And the other, I like a lot science genre. And when I was a child, read some books about the people in the other planets, the aliens, and I in my poems there are not poems, but this imaginary, strange imaginary, the robots or the other things, it's found in my poems. Yes, it's a strange combination maybe, but well.
What about India, Indian literatures? Have you read Indian writings? Most probably, yeah, it has to be in translation. So, were there ever a time where you have read Indian fairy tales, maybe fables from India and things like that? And
I must confess, I can't remember reading. I must have, as a child, because my mother's been to India. She went many years ago, and I remember her reading us translations of Indian children's books, but I can't remember what they were. Very bad memory, sorry. But the other day I was looking at the bookshop here, and I was so excited. I wanted to read everything, but unfortunately I don't have room in my suitcase. But when I go home, I'll certainly purchase many Indian books. I was very excited by what you have to offer, of course, and it's wonderful to be here.
If I remember right, I have read one Indian book. I can't remember the name of author because I'm bad even with remembering like Latvian names of people and authors. But it was a book about a little boy who was chasing this, how it is called, the thing that flies in the sky. I don't know. Yeah, maybe, I think, yes. And I suppose it wasn't Indian, no. Oh, I made a mistake. Sorry, my bad. I will do a better job at this. Ask me this question in a few years when I will be back. Thank you.
I think it also has to do now. I think it's a good time where we can do better exchanges in terms of reading each other's writings from each other's language. At least
I have an excuse. I bought a book. I bought a book of Indian author in the bookstore. It is about this pandemic survival in Kerala region. Yeah, so this will be my first book.
That's
from
wonderful,
Indian
and that
author.
too, it's from Kerala, where I'm from, so I'm happy again. Another thing is that we all are people who might be broadly considered young. I hope. I know people who are younger than me no longer considers me young, but still I would like to join the club. What are your hopes and aspirations and fears of the future that lies ahead? I know it's a very gloomy thing to ask, considering the climate change, considering how things have been, the larger world politics that we see be getting played out. What do you hope for the future as a writer, as a young person writing?
Okay, I will go first. As I have 3 kids, I have to be positive about future. I just have to be positive about it. In the same time, I know that I am afraid about a lot of things. for example, like right now in Europe, there is war going on. It's really close to my home, and it's crazy, and it's idiotic, and it's sad, and it's bad, and I don't know how to fix this world who is falling apart. And there are a lot of evil things I want to like keep off my kids, but at the same time, I understand it's something we have to deal with, and I can do my best. Of trying to make the surrounding around myself at least clean, at least good, at least inspiring in some ways, and yeah, I really try to keep the brightness in this world we live in. But at the same time, I think that if we see where the world goes on, it's quite a dark place. Yeah, I don't know.
He's a little reluctant to respond.
Well, thank you. Well, for me, the future, sometimes I think that was very different than this present. Because now living this time, the velocity is very fast. Sometimes, well, the digital revolution, that the smartphones, the internet in your mobile phone, and it's very complicated to process this change. And sometimes when I think, well, what is the future? I don't know, maybe this 2 years change a lot. And I prefer, well, it's my vision, I think that it's so non-negative. But yeah, I'm sorry, I know it's complicated. Yeah. I don't know. It's for me. Answer this question. Yeah. It's true. I don't have kids, but sometimes think about my family, my country, and write about these things. And I don't like this moment. Sorry, I don't like. Yeah.
I don't think you are alone. I don't think you are alone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a huge question. I think we've all been very slow to respond. Yes, oh my gosh. Well, to be honest, at this festival, it's nice to see that the theme is looking at lights in the future, which is wonderful. It's wonderful to be somewhere where there is hope, but we can't avoid the fact that it's for us young people definitely, and even though I don't have any kids either, but. Yeah, it seems quite gloomy in the future, not light as we want to hope. But yeah, I wanted to say something I can't remember. Oh, sorry, I forgot what I wanted to say. Oh well.
I would like to just add to what you were saying in between. Technology, internet, the immediate access that people have to the world of information at their fingertips. How does that change your approach to writing? Does it affect your... Do you think of these people who have fleeting attentiveness to writing, people who cannot read 500 pages any longer, people who cannot read more than... I forgot what the character limit for Twitter was. People who cannot read beyond that. Do you think the younger generation is indeed impatient when it comes to reading? Do they want fast-paced, quick things, even if it means cutting short your fiction, your writing, your paragraphs, your sentences? And does that affect your craft? A friend of mine once told me he wants to write nonfiction. So in order to perfect the way he writes prose, he writes poetry, because he has to express himself in lesser number of words, in lesser number of verses. Does that happen to your own writing? Do you keep these new readers in your mind when you write? Because you mentioned that you would like to write for young adults and young people in general.
I will start then. I think yes, it somehow leaves an impact on my writing, because I know myself. How am I with the watching some movies or reading some books, and it is like torturous moments when you realize that you get bored just because things doesn't happen so fast as you are used to, just because of computers and TV series and commercials and everything. We have like this huge amount of information on us thrown all the time. At the same time, as I come from a theater field, I'm a playwright. It is a little bit easier for me because playwriting is something that has like rules. You have to stick with these rules to do your job good, and it is based on dialogues, and these dialogues are becoming shorter and shorter each time, like just to resemble the same dialogues we hear on streets. There are really like small sentences, short with pauses and with the deep breaths and silence and stuff like this. And I know that I include this stuff in my book writing, so it becomes somehow also fragmentary, and it jumps in times, forth and back. So yes, it has put some impact on my writing, but I hope that I can do my writing well because I have the sense of language, Latvian language, how it should sound better and how it flows and how it makes some rhythm, and that's the most literary thing that I keep in my works, and that's the reason why it still is a literature, a good one.
Yeah, well, sorry. It's fact. We know that that our attention span collectively is diminishing because of social media. But I think that people always want to read books. I write for young adults like Rasa, and I didn't think about that when I was writing this book. It's a very long book. My book for young adults, so it's quite long. But I'm always thinking about grabbing a reader's attention when I'm writing. I don't think attention spans are getting smaller, so I need to write something that's shorter or that's more gripping. I think in a book, I think if a reader is able to feel immersed in the story and in the character's journey, I think they'll want to know how it ends, and they'll want to know. They want to finish the book. So, yeah, I didn't think about that myself when I'm writing, because I write what I want to write as well. I don't write for an audience. I write for me, which might not be the right way to go about doing it. But I write because I love it, and I didn't think about that. But I do hope that people feel immersed in my book.
It's perhaps a good thing.
Well, I write 3 books of poems, and these 3 books, I think that they influence the life or my normal day. Well, no, because when I write the poems, in this moment, in my head there are one obsession. For example, in this first book, I all the time think about the identities, the different identities, and think, different identities or the theory of language, or these things. And the other book, for example, my obsession in this moment is the theory of posthumanism. It's a good theory. And the last book in this time, I read a lot about the concept of history in different philosophers, because the influence is these books, is this read these moments, but I don't know. Yes.
That sort of brings me to another question, which as the audience would see, we have three writers from three different cultures that people probably in Kerala are not very familiar with. And how, whereas we are ourselves familiar with literature that is very pastoral, very much rooted in the cultures that we exist in. So let me put this in a very hypothetical way. Would you still have been a writer if you were not born in the place that you were born? Meaning, what role did your own culture play in shaping you into a writer?
For me, it was certainly the most important thing. In Welsh culture, literature is an integral part of our culture. There's a festival every year. It's much bigger than this festival. It's called the Eisteddfod Festival, and tens of thousands of people attend every year. And the main awards that are given out at this festival are for literature, for poetry and prose. And it's always been this way, for hundreds of years in Wales. And when I was growing up, there were lots of opportunities for me to develop my writing, lots of competitions and so on, and small Eisteddfods, local Eisteddfods, festivals all over Wales, where I could submit my work and I could receive judgments and comments, and I was able to develop my work. So it's always been there as I was growing up. And then now as a writer, full-time writer, I graduated from university last year, and since then I've had the privilege of being able to work full-time as a writer. But I wouldn't have been able to do that if the literature wasn't such a big part of Welsh culture, because there are a lot of grants available for Welsh writers, even though only 500,000 people speak the language. And yeah, I'm very, very privileged to be able to do that. And that is just because it's writing and books are such an integral part of our culture.
I think that somehow the same happens in Latvia, where we have also this community of writers and readers quite active and big. And actually, we are quite introvert people back home. And when I first stepped into this literary world of writing, I was very surprised how this literature opens up everyone. And I started to receive messages, letters, like there were reviews from regular people. They are changing the book, and somehow reading and writing becomes some sort of dialogue between us introvert Latvians. So I think it is a big part of culture, and I have been blessed with the best possible teachers, with very clever teachers, because I was quite an angry one when I was a teenager, I was like rebellious. But they knew how to put me back in the seat and how to show me that I can do it and that I am good at it. And I think that this is also something we cherish from generation to generation, this teaching thing. Like you start to feel the urge, the need to pass it away, pass it further to next ones. And I think that's also something we have in our culture as a part of writing and reading.
Right before the session, I was in conversation with a translator, and we were discussing about the politics of English language and its influence on regional literatures and languages themselves. As people coming from non-dominant languages, or in the larger picture, I would say in comparison to a language like English, how does your literatures resist the onslaught of English? Resist the hegemony of English? Do you do that by writing, by like you both mentioned how there are opportunities to write, there are good teachers who teach it. Is that how you do it? Is there a reading public that is encouraging? How do smaller languages and literary cultures there sustain themselves amidst the onslaught of English, if I should put it so?
Wow, that's a big question as well. Wow. Yes.
Or is that not a problem? It's a problem for us because, as an outsider, as somebody who's in Kerala, for us it's a big problem that we
Yes.
keep talking about. I'm a Malayali, that's a language that we speak here. We keep talking about how there is a risk of language dying out because people are easily embracing English.
Exactly.
Am I perceiving it wrong when I talk about your part of the world?
No, not at all. I'm just hesitant because trying to collect my thoughts on this question. It's such a big issue in Wales as well. So we're saying we 500,000 speakers and the numbers are dropping every year. So the language is slowly dying, unfortunately. But hopefully we can stop this. But yes, it's. I think in Wales specifically, I think things like the Eisteddfod Festival certainly they put a pedestal on literature and on writing and the language. And when I'm at the Eisteddfod, surrounded by thousands of Welsh speakers, first native Welsh speakers, I feel like, oh, this is not a dying language. It feels very lively and bustling and full of culture and diversity. And yes, it's such a big question. But no, it's certainly a big problem in Wales as well. But I think that things like festivals such as these as well, celebrating all sorts of languages, minority languages, and also the bigger international languages such as English is important. But to also put the pedestal on the minority language more than anything else, I think, to bring us to light.
To add to that, do you see your own writings in your languages as forms of resistance against this sort of an?
I do, yes. When I was writing this book, I was considering whether I should write it in Welsh or in English, and I thought, yes, I'm going to write it in Welsh, definitely at first. I've translated it myself into English now, but no, I wanted to write it in Welsh first because I wanted to give this book and this piece of literature to my community, to the minority language community in Wales. And it's been, very kindly well received because there isn't many young adult books in the medium of the Welsh language. So I'm very glad that I was able to contribute towards that.
If we speak about Latvia, I hope, but maybe I'm naive, but I do hope that the English language isn't a big threat. It's more the threat is for young people to just go away and to expand all over the world and to just stop talking Latvian and stop teaching their kids Latvian language and something like that, because everyone wants to seek for some opportunities, better life and stuff like this. But in the same time, I come from a very small country. We are around 2 million people in all Latvia. And half of these people, or at least half of these people, are Russian. And some of them don't want to speak Latvian, and they never will. But at the same time, there are us who can do it and who have to do it. And this is I really feel like writing is my responsibility, writing in Latvian, only in Latvian, in possibly good Latvian. And I want to, in the session before, you asked this question about reading in different languages also, and I am one of those readers who goes to bookstore, and first thing I look around and I want to read books in Latvian, good books but in Latvian, and only then I will go to English shelves and to check them out. So yeah, it's a big question. It's a big problem. It's a big deal. How to be proud of your language, but at the same time, how can you not be proud of your language? It's so simple. It's you.
Yeah. I'm from Barcelona, and Barcelona is the most important city that Catalonia. Catalonia is a region in the north of Spain, and there are 7 million inhabitants in Catalonia. And I see the papers because I have a notes about this question. The latest 34% that has been made is the only 30% of the population in Catalonia use the Catalan, because in Spain the official language is Spanish. But in the Spanish there are other minority language, for example the Gallego, Basque, Catalan, Aranese, Asturiano, but other minority language. But the people only know the Spanish, right? And in Catalonia there are 2 official languages, the Spanish and Catalan. But today, perhaps for the global conditions like social media or I don't know, they are doing to the new generation prefer to speak Spanish and not Catalan. And all the time, the people, for me, I'm a poet only, but the other writers or the other people at the wall of the culture of the arts, it's very important that the activism persistent all the time. Because, this scenario in Catalonia of the Catalan, it's so sad. And poetry and literature and different arts, it's becoming again a place of the resistance, but maybe not for too long. Yeah, and this situation. Yeah.
Okay, Megan, you mentioned that you translated the work from Welsh to English. That is something that I have always wondered. Can writers translate themselves? You mentioned that you never would want to write in English. Would you ever consider translating your works?
Myself?
Yeah?
No. But I do speak more languages. I speak Latvian and quite good Lithuanian and few more. Russian, English, a little bit French. But I would never write in these languages, like never ever, because I can't feel those languages the same I feel Latvian. And I love a lot of like playing with words and with stuff, you know. There are these small little things writers do when they write. They just play around the thing. So no for me. That's why we have translators, you know. Let's give them job.
Oh yes, you know, like Rasa, you know, Welsh is a language that's in my heart. You know, it's my soul, the language in my soul. But I do enjoy writing in English as well. It's different. It's a different voice, I find. I have some notes I have on my phone actually on the translation. Yes, I translated into English, and it was a different process to what I expected, because I found myself editing the work as I was translating, almost improving it, which is a shame because I don't want the English version to be better than the Welsh version. But yes, it was an interesting process, and But the sad thing is that in the process of translation, the dialect is lost, because in my book there's a very specific dialect that's specific to young people in northwest Wales, the area where I grew up. So it's a very, very specific dialect, and it's obviously impossible to translate this into English. But I hope that like I was saying, the Welsh is in my heart, and the same with these characters as well, but their Welshness is the core of who they are. So I hope that I've been able to in the translation that I've been able to sort of transpose their humanity into the English translation and their personalities and the characters. And I hope for that reason that their Welshness is there as well, because it's who they are. So even though the dialect and the language is lost, I hope that their Welshness is still there.
Was there any way in which you tried to retain some of the dialectical nuances of the language that you originally wrote in when you attempted the translation?
No, there wasn't. It was too difficult because I might read a quick extract, actually,
Please,
if that's
please.
okay, to
Yes, I was
demonstrate
going
why.
to ask all of you, yeah.
Yeah.
Please.
So I'm going to read just a...
Just hold the mic
Oh,
and you can-
thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to read a little bit of the novel goes back and forth between two different characters and the dialects are different, but I'm going to read a little bit of the dialect that I was talking about, which is it's Wenglish actually. Oh yes, something called Wenglish because there's a combination of Welsh and English and mishmash. So you might be able to hear some sort of smattering of English words. Ar ôl fi siarad, mae'n edrych arna fi fatha mae gwallt fi wedi troi fewn I snakes a mae'n jympio, dŵr neu rhywbeth yn cwpan fo'n tolli a slapio ar lawr. Mae'n plygu lawr so mae'r gwely'n cuddiad lot ohono fo lle dwi'n eistedd ar y silff ffenast, ond dwi dal yn gallu gweld dilo fo'n nôl notebook neu rhywbeth o bag plastig mae'n hapnu fod yn cario, a ripio papur allan I wsio fo I trio sychu'r dŵr fyny. Dwi mor, sori, meddwl fo mewn llais bach fatha plian yn trio fflio ato fi trwy storm neu rhywbeth. Dwi'n jympio lawr o ffenast a nôl y bocs tissues sy'n ar y bwr Leaning Tower of Pisa wrth gwely fi. Ynda, meddwl fi, a lluchio bocs ato fo. Dio ddim yn dal o fo, dwylo fo mewn gafal ar un byd wrth i'r bocs crasio disgyn wrth traed fo. So ti'n mwyn chwarae rygbi then, meddwl fi? Mae'r hogyn yn gwenu, ond diom yn deud un byd. I'n mynd I fy sbio arno fi, mo'n plygu lawr eto I llai'r estor dŵr fyny. Yeah, I might read just a tiny bit of the translation in English as well. So it's a book about these two teenagers who are suffering from quite severe mental health issues, and they're also members of the LGBTQ+ community. And so in this scene, they're meeting for the first time at a psychiatric facility. What the fuck? Honest. He looks at me like my hair's turned into snakes or something and jumps at least 10 feet into the air, whatever liquid that was in his cup sloshing out and slopping onto the floor. He bends down till he's hidden behind the bed, and I can't see him from my windowsill perch, but I can still sort of see his hands through the gap under the bed. He pulls this notebook thing out from the plastic bag he just happens to be carrying and rips a few pages out of it, trying to soak up his spillage with the paper. I'm so sorry, he says in this tiny voice like a feather trying to float towards me through a storm or something. I jump down from the windowsill and grab a tissue box from my Leaning Tower of Pisa bedside table. Here, I say, throwing the box towards him, but he doesn't catch it. His hands close on nothing as the box crashes at his feet. So you don't play rugby then? He smiles, but doesn't say anything, doesn't even look at me, just bends back down to his puddle. So that's sort of the context that Oh, thank you so much. Oh, sorry, that's your mic. Thank you so much for holding that. So yeah, you can sort of, I don't know if you could hear some of the English words in there, but in the Welsh version. But yeah, it's something that a lot of us call Wenglish. Yeah. Sorry.
So I can add to that question. So if ever or I don't know if your works have already been getting translated into English, if it ever happens, would you be a sort of collaborative translator? Would you work with the translator, or would you believe, are you somebody who believes that my work is done, now I leave it to the translator?
Yeah. So regarding the translation, I had the experience of some my points being translated in other language. In Catalonia, there is the Ramon Llull Institute. The Ramon Llull Institute is an organization responsible for the international projector of the Catalan language and the culture. And if I am today here, it's thanks for the Ramon Llull, and also thanks for you making this fantastic festival, and Alexandra from the Literature Across Frontiers. And well, this is interesting, this institute, the Ramon Llull, because another very important thing is to translate poems in Catalan in other language. I'm a poet, I'm not a translator, not yet. Well, for example, a few times when I went to recite in other poetry festivals, I had the opportunity to have my poems translated in other language, for example, in French or English or Italian or Portuguese or in another. And my last experience I had related to translation when the translator and friend Jacob Rhodes translate my poems into English, not a book, it's just some poems. Jacob is from England and has lived in Barcelona for many years and speaks very good Catalan. Even so, during this translation, it was very interesting to see the dots that had reading words to exist. There were words that exist in Catalan, but now in English. And then Jacob said, "Whoa, Raquel, this word, explain me this metaphor or this image." And this process was it's fantastic. And it's the other point. It's in particularly this has also happened when he commented me on the metaphors of the poems in relation to the rhyme and the musicality, because when you write poems in Catalan, it's most important the rhyme and the musicality. And sometimes when you translate these poems, lost these questions, these things. And for me, it's very important. And Jacob told me, well, sacrifice the metaphor for a rhyme, or I translate your poetic image and your metaphor, but sacrifice the rhyme. These questions was very interesting. If you want, I can read a poem in Catalan. It's example this. Because in Catalan there are the metaphors, the rhyme, the musicality, and in English the traduction it's so good, but the rhyme and the musicality change. The poem maybe it's much better. Read Megan in English, and I read in Catalan. Okay. Sorry, in Catalonia, never reading a sit in a chair. The title is Allà on ho havíem deixat. Després de l'epopeia vam tirar una moneda en l'aire. Creu-me, la puta divinitat, no podíem dir cara, perquè tothom sap el codi del bronze. La matèria t'arrapa i t'apresa, sotmesa. Tot ella no et deixa escapar. I ara la creu se'n reflectia al rostre, partint-nos la barra, partint-nos els llavis, deixant-nos estràbics i per llançar. Vam comprar els vols com qui paga el barquer per avançat, i després els udols i la culpa que va tornar. Quan sopàvem a les cabines, el dins de les nostres ninetes rubines va rebotar a l'exterior, vam poder veure portes i ales i una diadema de focus s'abraonar fins l'horitzó. Érem sobre l'esquena d'un volcà amb la panxa ben plena, érem sobre l'esquena d'un avió amb la panxa ben oberta, podíem veure tots els estels, la Via Làctia munyint-se sobre nosaltres, la llum del sol cremant sobre les galtes, els sostres dels edificis condemnats negres com parques, la història entrant per un tub de ventilació. I després uns obrers mirant el forat. I tot això, qui ho voldrà escombrar? El 0 és un número molt dur per batejar una zona. I Déu, el lloc. I Déu, el lloc. I Déu, cap Déu, cap, thank you.
I'll stand up to read it in English as well. It needs to be done. Oh, and yeah, thank you. Where we left off. After the epic, we tossed a coin in the air. Tails, fucking wretched divinity. We couldn't call head because everyone knows the bronze code. The material clings and hurries you on, all of it suppressed, it leaves no escape. And now its tail is reflected on our faces, splitting our lips, splitting our jaws, leaving us cross-eyed and to be thrown away. We booked our flights as if paying the boatsman up front, and then the wailing and then the guilt that had returned when we supped in the cabins, and the deep of our ruby pupils for eyes shot outwards. We could see doors and wings, and a tiara of city lights stretched out into the horizon. We flew over a volcano's back, its belly wide open. We flew over the black back of a plane, its belly wide open. We could see the stars, the Milky Way's contents squeezed out above us, the sun's heat burning on our cheeks, the roof of all the buildings doomed black as the fates. History entering the world through a ventilation shaft, and then workers looking down at the hole. And who's going to sweep up this mess? 0 is a crude number to baptize a zone. And God? Nowhere. And God? Nowhere. No God? Not a single one?
I must say that even though what you had done, the orality of your own language was slightly lost in the in translation, we could still feel the power of it. So, coming back to you, you said that you don't want to interfere with or get into translations ever, but
Of my
what
works.
is, of your own works, or if that is the case, would you stay away from your translator, or would you still talk to the person? Would you be willing to answer questions, or would you let the person interpret your writing?
My book is translated now into Estonian, Lithuanian, and Turkish, and is currently translating it in Croatian, and there are a few more languages in queue waiting for it to happen. So the process is on, and I'm really happy and thrilled about it. And I am very grateful for Estonian translator and Lithuanian translator, because they reached me as they have had some questions about the book, and these questions were quite lovely in a way. But for example, in Latvian, one of the most common words for cat is muris, and in the book there is this word for cat. But in Estonian, they use the same word as a common word for dog. So it would be like a little difference in both ways, and so yeah, we talk it through, and we found the perfect word for Estonian cat, which is different cat, you know. and there were some questions from Lithuanian translator as well about small words I use in Latvian, because as I said before, I like to play with the rhythm as well, and that's why the structure of sentences can be difficult, and you have to understand what I want to say, and it's completely normal in Latvian, but it can be confusing in different languages. So they both contacted me, and it was great pleasure and really easy to decide what to do with these questions. But I have no idea what happened with Turkish version. so it's like a secret for me, and maybe I will ask some of my Turkish friends to read the book and to tell me how it is, at least. Because yeah, I'm very, very interested in the result.
But unfortunately, you will not ever be able to read it and grasp it. As opposed to your case where you are able to enjoy both. And you said that in your writing, when you translated it, you did make a bit of editing, you did change things a bit. So we have heard this about many writers. We say that Legends of Kazakh of O.V. Vijayan is entirely different from its Malayalam version because the author himself translated it, and in the process must have, like all good authors, edited it because he's himself a critic of his own work. Would you now go back and change your old text? Is that something that you're considering?
I'd like to, but I don't know if it's possible. Yeah, well, the book, I think, in Welsh is in its third edition now. I'm not sure if it's going to get another edition. I don't know, we'll see. But yeah, and if it is, I might. But when it was being reprinted the first time, they asked me if I wanted to change anything, and at that time I was like, I just finished the book, and I was like, oh my gosh, no, I don't want to go back to this book ever again. But now I enjoy revisiting it, even though it makes me feel frustrated that there's some parts I don't like anymore. So yeah, I would like to, but I don't know if it'll be possible.